I'm you always look forward. You're optimistic, you're pessimistic, you get nervous a little bit, just kind of what's going to happen during spring practice. And that's the fun part of this, and that never ends as a coach. And I think the excitement of it, because every year is a new year. It's a new group of guys, and obviously some old faces, but at the same time, influx of new guys that are going to be playing key roles in what we're doing. The excitement for them, for us doing it the way we're doing it this year, we're going to take those 2 practices before we go to spring break, come back, hit 13 more practices, getting ready for our Friday night game, that'll culminate in that orange and blue game. And I'm excited about that piece. We'll also try to do on a couple of the Saturdays, as normal, we'll practice what we do if we have a noon tip-off, practice what we do if we have a CBS National 3:30 game, which we will, and then obviously teach how we go about a night game, which we'll get that with the spring game, and excited about that weekend. I know we've got baseball in that weekend as well. Should be a great weekend for Gator sports and Gators athletics, and get people, around seeing all the new things that are going on. I think the excitement and the momentum that we've built, it continues to roll and go forward. The announcement, with the architecture and the stuff moving forward with the new facilities is a game changer. That's also going to help Sully and Tim over there with softball and the things that they need to move forward. I was excited to get an opportunity, even out at took a day to go out and see my daughter out in Phoenix during just happened to be the Waste Management Open. And I'll tell you what, the support and the excitement about just our golf program, man, it's pretty awesome being around that too. So I think that speaks for what's happening as a whole athletic department. And then as we move forward football-wise, I know as we go around locally, regionally, nationally, a lot of people understanding what we've overcome, what we've been able to build in the 2 short years we've been here has been outstanding. The excitement's there. And you know what? It's a lot of fun. And this group of guys going through what we're doing right now in our Swamp Life program, you can feel the energy and excitement as we head to what we call Phase 3 of a 6-phase program before we get to Dallas to play Michigan next year. And so we're heading into starting next week, the 3rd phase, which is spring practice, which will tell us a lot about what kind of team we're going to have, but more than that, what kind of leadership we're going to have, what we need to do fundamentally to be sound in all the different phases, and discover some players that are needing to step up and make some plays, and that should be a lot of fun. So looking forward to it. That time of year, never been able to start spring practice really this early at some of the places I've been, because I remember one year at Montana State, we actually got snowed out of 3 separate days, ran out of days, so we only got 11 practices in one spring because of snow. So I don't think we got to worry about that here, and that's a good thing. But let's get to the injury. I know you've been just waiting for this injury update, all right? And so the guys that are definitely out all of spring: Antonio Riles, Freddie Swain, Luke Del Rio, Jordan Sherritt, David Reese, J.E.A.1 Taylor, and Quincy Linton. All right, those guys will be out for all of spring. Now, non-contact will get in, all our group drills and those type of things, which is really good. Dre Massey, which, as you guys know, was a big blow to us offensively last year when we lost him on the opening kickoff. It's exciting to have him back. James Houston will be able to work at linebacker, coming off a knee from a year ago. And then C.J. McWilliams, who was really showing a lot of promise during two-a-days, last fall. So he'll be able to, those guys will all be able to participate in everything but live contact stuff. So that's a good thing for us. And looking forward to it. Quarterback competition, obviously Luke will not be going with Kyle and Felipe, and giving us a chance to get Kadarius Toney a lot of reps at the position and find out exactly what he can do and see where that fits as we experiment with some of the things moving forward. We're going to do this spring offensively. That should be fun and should be good for a lot of guys. It'll help us also from a defensive standpoint, as we have to defend the certain things you're going to see throughout the year. So working against each other to help each other get better and finding out the competition piece at all those positions should be a lot of fun. And I know there's a lot of excitement with our players. Obviously, the addition of new personnel, coaching-wise, getting a feel for how those guys go out there and coach and our expectation of how we run practice. That's always fun. I always get a kick out of seeing the new guys figuring out when the horn blows where to get to next. And that gives me for some entertaining staff meeting moments as well. So that's a lot of fun. But questions?
When you have two young quarterbacks, what is it you're looking for in terms of development and progress this spring?
I think the biggest piece we're looking for first and foremost is somebody to step up and say, you know what, I'm going to take this and I'm going to lead this team and help the parts around me play better. Now with that, it can't be forced. It's got to be natural, and really the understanding of how and what we need to do is really what we're looking for. As always, every drill is graded. Everything that you do, there is no such thing as whether it's routes on air, the accuracy of the throws and where it needs to be and all of those type of things, and understanding the importance of every moment means something. Take advantage of it.
And then you mentioned getting Toney some reps there. Are you considering maybe adding a little bit of more of a running element to that position?
Yeah, and it's something we did a little bit with Austin, and yet this gives us a little bit more as we move forward. So, we also had those packages in for Dre Massey that we worked on extensively, and we're able to use it for one kickoff, right? So.
You're able to get Duke Dawson back. What does that mean for the secondary, especially when you look at all the freshmen you'll have coming in and just kind of his leadership role?
Well, I think Duke and Marcel both, that's huge for us. As it was a year ago kind of with Marcus, and it has as much to do with, their investment in showing the young guys this is how we go about it here, and this is part of you being part of this legacy. What is their legacy going to be handed down to these young guys? And I think that's really good. We'll be able to move Chauncey a little bit out to some corner as well. We'll be able to rotate some things, both corner, safety, nickel, so we can create some depth in there. Missing, in the secondary, just talking about that in general. Obviously, missing JEA1 and Quincy hurts, and yet it's an opportunity for some other guys to get, a lot of reps. So those guys are going to have great summers because we're going to count on them as well in that rotation in the back end. So,
Coach, how big was it getting the two quarterbacks in here last spring in terms of how they've developed since they've been here?
Boy, it's been great, and not only that, but their understanding and really the respect of the team, piece as far as how they go about their business has been great. And, not to be overshadowed there is Luke's involvement in helping them, prepare to be a starter.
And how close are those two, do you think, coming into the start of spring?
They're close. Yeah, they're real close. There's probably about a half-inch difference between them, I think. So, I don't know. Kadarius is smaller, so.
going back to Duke, will he stay at nickel or will he switch to a full?
No,
corner switch?
he'll be corner, full time. Obviously, his ability to play nickel is only something that's not only going to help us, but help him in the future. As it did Brian Poole. So I think his ability to be able to show playing all that stuff is going to do nothing more than strengthen our depth, help the Gators get better, and help him personally.
And then Martez, will he go out to the tackle?
Yeah,
or-
he'll go out to tackle. Good question. I didn't hit that. I actually had that written down. All right. I wasn't trying to hide it. I just skipped over it. But Tez will go out to left. We need to develop, between him and Wani and Fred. All right. We need to get Stone involved. As now he's been a freshman. Now he's ready to roll. With Antonio Riles out, getting Hagee both at center and at guard is going to be huge for us. So there'll be some really good competition as we get rolling there. As I talk about that, position changes, which I had written down right there. I should hit those, right? So you guys aren't like first day of practice, like, hey, wait a minute, this guy's supposed to be in this color jersey. Like I'm hiding it, right? Duke Dawson play quarterback. No, we're number 7, right? No. Richard Desir-Jones is going to move from O-line over to D-line, okay? And we're going to bring Tanner Rowell over from D-line to O-line as an inside position, both teach him center and guard. And then Cam Knight is going to go from tight end over to linebacker for this spring. Take a look at that.
Just that line overall, who are the guys you're looking at that guard spot now? And does anyone else, does Wani stay where he was? Everyone else the same?
Yeah, pretty much. I think the big thing, Tyler Jordan needs to really take another step forward in both his conditioning and his overall understanding on the play. He's had 2 years of it now, and so we need some big steps and improvements there. Nick Buchanan's a guy that I think is ready to step in and really be productive. Obviously, TJ holding down the center. I mean, if you were to talk probably, well, you could say that about a lot of different spots. Beauchamp and KC a year ago and even how Chauncey played. But I think TJ McCoy's a guy that, when he came in, it was like, oh, geez, we're down to our third, and yet probably found our best guy at that position. So I'm excited about that. And, really it'll be how those guys communicate. And obviously with the new O-line coach, seeing how they adapt to that as well.
I'm guessing it doesn't change much with the coaching staff, but do you think having Michigan sitting out there instead of the usual group of 5 type opponent will instill a little greater sense of urgency?
Sense of urgency.
Yeah.
It's something that obviously the schedules are made well in advance, but that's something I remember when I first got to Alabama and just philosophical things talking with Coach. He believed in trying to get one of those games early in the year if we could, and I think that first year we opened up with Clemson and the Chick-fil-A, and I think we had Penn State at a home and home early in the year. And it was something that I know our guys looked forward to, and just asking philosophically the reasons. That sense of urgency about, no, it isn't a warm-up game. We're not, and then we get into the SEC season or something like that. You need to get going right off the bat, and I think that helps in all 6 phases as far as your ability to get ready to go. And in this case, I could see, well, and we're young too, but just see that energy in those first 2 phases. And spring ball now, we got to get ready. And throughout practice, there'll be certain periods even now that we work on certain opponents, things that give you trouble. As we get to practice 8, 9, and 10, there'll be periods that we'll actually focus on opponents, so it isn't brand new when we get into prep week next year.
Obviously, Luke's out for the spring, as you mentioned, but how's he doing now physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually?
Well,
whatever?
here's the exciting thing. He just got accepted into the sports management graduate program, which, like Jordan Sherritt, who got accepted in the International School of Business graduate program, that's pretty awesome. And so there's obviously, he's a competitor. He wants to play as bad as anybody wants to play, but he also understands he's got to get healthy to do it. But with that, the way he's been, in just around even those young guys and kind of organizing some of the things they do on their own, he's been a big piece of that.
Thomas, I'm sorry.
Do you mind walking us through what your 6 phases are?
So what we try to do for the guys is we try to break down basically after the bowl game as we hit into the new season. And really the bowl game itself is part of phase 1. As we go into that piece, headed into, our transitional stuff that we do in the weight room to prepare ourselves for phase 2, which is a heavy lift, all right, and swamp life. Phase 3 goes into spring. Phase 4 then becomes that period between spring and your first summer, all right, which is a breather session, all right. We got to get ourselves back before we prepare for 5, which is that heavy summer, and then 6, of course, which is fall camp. Heading in, and so we segment it in those ways, so our guys, it puts the focus on what we need to accomplish during this period of time. Okay, now we've accomplished that. Now let's refocus and recenter for the next goal and phase in which we got to go. And I think our guys kind of get where it doesn't become monotonous, because there's an actual change of focus in each one of those phases. I know I get bored doing the same stuff all the time, so I don't know whether they do or not.
What are some ways behind the scenes you've seen the progress from year 1 to 2 to now 3?
Well, I think biggest thing is the commitment and understanding on what we need to do moving forward to continually get better. Obviously, anytime you get influx of new players, it always changes, that's what kind of makes it fun. And, watching those guys develop and mold themselves and eventually really dealing with the power of one and understanding that each one of us have the ability to get ourselves better, which in turn can affect someone in a positive way. And if each one of us can just affect one person, well, guess what? That one person then can lead to another, and that person can lead to another. And really understanding the personal investment it takes within that is kind of been cool to see that continue to grow. And guys kind of understanding through, sometimes you have to, no, not sometimes, all of us, you have to fail, and you've got to be able to put yourself out there to fail to learn how to be successful. And you can't be afraid to fail. When you're afraid to fail, that means ultimately you're not going to give your all to be great. And so seeing our guys get out of that and seeing the department, the organization, get out of that fear of, and rather, let's not fear it. Let's go jump in and see what we can do. That's what I see. And obviously, the commitment, not to us as a football program or not to me as a coach, but the commitment to the University of Florida to become not only what it should be, but can be, and then sustainable on top of that. Seeing some of those things come to fruition is pretty cool.
And I know there are different situations, but year 3 at Colorado State was a big year for you in that progression. Are there any similarities you see in just the timeline and the way things have progressed here relative to there?
I haven't really. That's really probably a pretty good question. I think, I'm not one of those guys that ever really. You learn from the past, but you don't ever look at it. Does that make sense? Because each place has its own set of issues, its own strengths, its own negatives, and you got to work on those independently of whatever it was. So, I don't know. We got off to a better start here than I did there. Come to think of it, and that's a good thing, really good thing. Because let me tell you what, that first 4-win season was absolutely miserable, and yet it was the best thing that happened. Because really, as a program, we learned, we moved forward. Now, coming off of, we did make a little advancement because they'd come off a 3-9 for the previous 3 or 4 years, whatever it was. So, but I think every year is its own. I don't think you can group it into something, and I think when you start to do that, then you aren't doing the service to what the issues are at that current moment.
Landon in the back.
Just obviously you've mentioned position changes. Just as far as Ja'Kai Polite, do you expect him more at defensive end or tackle moving forward next season?
I think his ability to do both. Obviously, we're a little thin body type. I'm excited. Kyrie's here, obviously, to help in there. I think Kerry and Taven have really had good off season. I'm excited to see where their development is, and as well as Luke Ankrum inside. But we'll also continue to use him in some offensive packages as well because of his versatility of being able to play that tight end spot.
And just focusing, I guess, squarely on Felipe Franks, just since that spring game to now, just what areas of his game have you seen him improve the most?
I think the biggest thing there is understanding that it just doesn't happen automatically. That there's a learning curve, and there's a lot that can be learned from when things don't go well, and how do you deal with that? But more than that, how do I learn from it to get myself out of it to get better? And I've seen that from him.
Jordan over here to the right.
Taking that learning curve into account, having the early enrollees here, how long do you think it usually takes them to start figuring out, okay, this is what I need to do, and how much does it help having them here so they get that before the summer starts?
Well, I think about if you point at maybe some of the guys even a year ago with all those guys that came in early, they were ready to play game 3, 4, 5 rather than probably game 6, 7, 8, 9, from that standpoint. I think it's invaluable. And yet, as I tell every guy, that's looking to do that's a personal choice. I struggle with it a little bit from the standpoint of I can remember how much fun I had the spring semester of my senior year in high school. And then I think about these guys should be going to the prom, but they're out there, beating their heads against, some of these players that are 4 years older than them in an environment that's totally different than what they've ever done in high school. I think the fact that they do that is what advances them, though. And, I'm looking for big things out of those guys that are here early.
Thomas.
I know you guys feel like you've upgraded the talent pretty considerably at receiver. What are you looking at of that group to kind of take the next step?
Yeah, I see it as a real group of strength for us, and I think the big thing is now comes the accountability piece and competition piece amongst each other, and then understanding where they need to be and why they need to be there in all the different parts of the passing game. I'm excited about that group, and we've got great depth. One of the guys that we didn't talk about that, it's Freddie being out. He got a lot of reps last year. I know he's miserable, because he's one of those guys that wants to go compete, and yet that's a good thing, right? And so, but with that, that comes some more reps for some other guys, but he'll come right back and step in when he's cleared and ready to go. So I think our ability to put some real weapons on the field at that position is going to help us.
Okay, Ryan, any other final questions for Ryan?
Going back to the line real fast, couldn't even tell for that. How do you see him fitting in? I know he's the natural tackle, but will he compete at guard too?
We're going to start him out at tackle because we need to develop even more depth at that point. And he's a guy obviously who's very talented. Now going through swamp life, that was the first time he's ever done anything like that. As all these guys you mentioned, that come into a program at mid-year when they should be, running track, or whatever. So, but I'll be interested to see. I think he's a guy that loves to compete, and I can see that in the drills that we do this off season. And it'll be fun to see him get in there and battle.
And then with Dre, how has he looked? And do you have the same plans for him this year as you had last year?
Yeah, I mean, that was a piece of the offense that we can put back in now. We'll see what he can handle. We're not going to overload him because obviously, as you can tell, he's not in any of the contact stuff, which is the right thing. But he's also a weapon and a guy I'm looking forward to seeing out there on SEC Saturdays.
How big of a chunk of the playbook was gone after that kickoff?
None of us will ever know. All right, guys. Have a good one.